At that time, there were no crimes against marital rape, and because of an understanding that sort of, a wife was a husband's property in some sense through the laws of coverture, there's, there was a view that he could take her whenever he wanted, and clearly there were, disproportionate consequences of that act on her. And there was a lot of sort of pushing back against that among the early women's rights advocates. So, and that also went hand in hand in their as sort of a response for them to the rising, what they called the rising crime of abortion, which at that point was there were statutes that had prohibited abortion throughout the pregnancy in the mid to late 19th century. These women's rights advocates saw no problem with that. They understood the child to be very much their responsibility as mothers from, when the child was, existed within them. They actually really, some of them, some of the early doctors fought people like Madame Ristel, who was an abortionist in New York City, very well known. They also wanted to disabuse women of thinking that, their care and concern for their child only happened when they could feel the child through quickening, that the science at that time, the science of embryology, had developed to know that there was a child before that time. And so they did, Dr. Alice Stockholm talked about life beginning at conception. The first woman to run for president on the Equal Rights Party, Victoria Woodhull, was very, very strong in her language, calling abortion murder, others likewise. So they saw voluntary motherhood as also a response to the crime of abortion, that if women could have the way, we would say it today as autonomy over their bodies, that is, that they could say no to sex, even within marriage, even and especially within marriage, then they would not be, have what we would say is today forced pregnancy. But they didn't see that autonomy extend to taking the life of their own child because they saw that body as a different body from their own, to whom they owed great responsibility. So this idea, fast forward to the second wave, that you could have a right to abortion, to ending the life of your own child, would be philosophically untenable to them because they saw rights as necessary to carry out those duties to their child, and they saw the child as having their own rights. Victoria Woodhull is very clear about that. She says rights that begin when they're a fetus. So voluntary motherhood, this need for this call, up and against the kind of perennial double standard that men should be chaste, that it ought not just be women who are responsible for chastity, but men should be chaste too, comes very much out of Wollstonecraft's thought as well. She really is also, saying up and against Rousseau at that period, it's not just women who are responsible for chastity, men are responsible for chastity too. It's not just men who get to, who are called to, have all the other virtues. Women ought to be called to all those virtues as well. So it's very much of a piece in terms of the first wave being very Wollstonecraftian.